Sorry. Okay, so let's talk about. I got a question. What is a reasonable due diligence fee? Let me explain what a due diligence fee means. What is a due diligence fee? And whether this applies in New York or not. If you stay to the end, I'm going to talk to you about why New York. One of the things that make New York difficult is this topic. So, in other states, they call something a due diligence fee. We call it a deposit or an earnest money deposit. What is done in a lot of states is that a buyer will pay a seller a due diligence fee. This is usually a non-refundable fee, and it's usually a nominal amount: $100, $1,000, $500. It's negotiated, and what it does is allow the buyer to go do some due diligence. So let's explain first of all how contracts work in other states. In other states, I still haven't cleaned up my desk, and I'm still doing this. I got to fix this. In other states, a contract takes place between a buyer and a seller, and the buyer says, "I want to buy your house for X dollars." Seller says yes. Buyer brings out a contract, and usually there is this due diligence or an inspection period in the contract where the buyer can leave. Typically, a due diligence fee, as it's called in certain states, is given and is non-refundable. If the buyer closes, then that due diligence fee is credited to the price. So if I gave, let's say, $500, I was buying a house for $100,000, I already paid you $500 for that from the due diligence fee. What we do in New York and in most places is an earnest money deposit. A deposit which is usually held in escrow by an attorney or a title company, and that money is returned if the deal doesn't close. Now, the typical reasons why the deal wouldn't close in other states is that the buyer can walk away. There's usually some period of time that the buyer can leave. See, that doesn't happen in New York. The only typical contingency in New York is a mortgage contingency that would allow the buyer to get out of a contract if he doesn't get a mortgage. But another reason why it might not close is there's some kind of title issue shows up that the seller can't deliver clean title. So, for example, the seller finds a lien for $1 million on the property that he can't pay off. He can't convey the property over. Now, when I go to contract as a cash buyer, I have no contingencies, right? So that's really, and we got to understand that the value that a cash buyer provides to a seller is the certainty and convenience that we bring, right? The certainty that we're going to close, that we have no contingencies to get out, which, to be honest, on a standard contract with a mortgage contingency, and I was in the mortgage business for 17 years, is really a get out of contract free card. It's very easy to get denied for a mortgage. If you ask for it, you can. And it happened on dozens of occasions where somebody called me and said, "I changed my mind, just give me a denial." Very easy to deny somebody for a mortgage. Documents expire all the time. So that's the certainty that you provide, and the convenience that I'm going to close on your time frame. You may not have to clean everything out of that property. It's typical that I'll let you leave stuff there. You don't have to you don't have to show the property 50 times. So this is the convenience and certainty, and I think most sellers understand they're going to sell their property for less money to a cash buyer for that certainty and convenience that the cash buyer brings. Right? This is not a situation predatory where we take advantage of people. That's not what happens. So back to deposits and due diligence fees. Now, in New York, we don't call it a due diligence fee. There is something on a commercial transaction where there is a due diligence period, where you do have that inspection period of time. There are soft deposits that are given all the time. So that, for example, I'll give a deposit. So it could be something significant. It could be 20, 50, $100,000, depending on the size of the deal. And that will give me 30, 60, 90 days, 120 days to actually check all the leases and all the tenants and all the credit of the tenants and all that crap, things that I want to see. And if I don't close, if I'm out, then I get that money back. That's called a soft deposit. We don't call it a due diligence fee because it's really the opposite. A due diligence fee typically is non-refundable. So I'm giving you $100, $500. I'm going to go into contract. Let me check out what's going on in this house. Let me do my due diligence. And if I don't close on it, you keep that money. That's the opposite of what happens on a commercial transaction with a soft deposit, which means, give the money, and if you don't close, then we'll get it back. There are several places that actually land soft deposits at pretty favorable terms because they figure, you can get the money back if you want. They check the contract, obviously, to make sure that you can get the money back. But if you're going to close, then it's not a big deal. Then you're a serious buyer. And if you're not going to close, you get the money back, and they charge whatever different rates for these soft deposits. But in New York, so what's typical, and what I've been looking at in other states, is like 1% of the purchase price would be the deposit or the due diligence fee, depending on where you are or how it works. In New York, a typical deposit is 10% of the purchase price. So you've got to understand, if you're buying a house for $300,000 and you don't speak to the seller and seller's attorney in advance, they're going to send you a contract. Oh, just explain how it works. I didn't even explain it yet. So as opposed to other states, in 49 states where a transaction takes place between a buyer and a seller, in New York, a real estate transaction takes place between a seller's attorney and a buyer's attorney. So when a buyer and seller agree, the seller engages an attorney. The attorney sends a contract to the buyer's attorney, and they start negotiating, right? And they each get, between $1,000 and $3,000 in legal fees for that, right? Which is also crazy when people in other states hear that. But that's how it happens. Now, a standard contract in New York is going to be 10%. So you buy something for $300, you're going to get a contract that says, please send this check for $30,000. Now, it's a lot, right? I have a lot of transactions going on now. I can sort of see my board with those post-it notes. But you have to have that conversation beforehand to try and get that lower. You have to sort of get into it and understand that some attorneys are still not going to allow their you're not going to send out a contract with a minuscule um, earnest money deposit. But the reason why this happens is because the attorneys do not, and the reason why there's no inspection contingencies on a standard contract is because the attorney does not want to prepare the contract that the buyer can just walk away from. They want the buyer to be serious, and they want to know this is going to happen. So that's really it's just a circle, right? Attorneys are used, therefore attorneys get involved and say, you want to get more. So I've had situations where sellers agreed to pay me, let's say $10,000, and the attorney said he want more, I want 5% of the purchase price. That's typical, right? And I have to decide whether it's worth for me to fight it, or whether it is not worth it to fight, right? It depends. If it's a really good deal, I may do it. But understand that I have a lot of earnest money out there on the street right now, and I tell the seller, um, listen, I'm involved in a lot of transactions, so I put 10% out on every deal. I'd probably be out of business just from no cash flow. And the truth is, it's true, right? There's a lot of money out there, and I want it. I want to keep that money I want to limit that as much as possible. It's just money sitting in a seller's attorney's account. So that's how things work in New York, and you have to be prepared. There really are 3 seeds you need to plant in the seller's mind after he agrees to sell you the property. After you agree on a price. And they are: 1, the size of the deposit, as I just said; 2, assignability of the contract, because standard contracts in New York are not assignable; and 3, you want to talk about showing the property, right? If you're going to wholesale it. If you're not going to wholesale, you don't have to show the property. But even if you're going to close on the property, you want to get in there once just to maybe get some contractors in to get some estimates. So you want to plant those seeds in advance, because it's important that before the seller's attorney, let me tell you what happened. Even when you plant the seeds, the seller's not going to really remember it. But the point is that the seller's attorney is going to send you a contract that's going to have a big deposit, 10%. It's going to not be assignable, and it's going to not talk about showing the property. And then your attorney is going to come back and say, hey, we only want to give X amount. We need it to be assignable, and we want to show the property once. We want to get into the property for an hour once. Now, what's going to happen at that point is the seller's attorney is going to call the seller and say, who are these guys? What do they want? It assignable? Maybe they're flipping the property contract. Now, if you planted the seeds in the seller's mind, the seller will probably say something like, yeah, we spoke about it. It's all fine. In which case the seller's going to be okay. We might say, okay. Even then, he might say, no, I want more money. It's ridiculous. So sometimes, once in a while, an attorney kills the deal. It's possible. It happens very infrequently, though. But if you planted the seeds in the seller's mind, then when that conversation happens, the seller is prepared. The seller assures his attorney that everything's okay, that this was discussed, that it's all right, and you have a much better chance of getting everything you want in the contract. And it's really important that the contract is written a certain way. I know people that say, I don't want to use attorneys, I'm going to draw my own contract. It's fine if everything goes right, but when things go wrong, you need a contract that protects your interest. It's really, really important. So use a good attorney. Don't be stupid when it comes to the contract. Have the seller use an attorney, even though it seems like that makes things worse. It usually makes things better in the end if things go wrong. And those are my thoughts on due diligence fees. So I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in all the ways I can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com. If you're interested in a course I have that teaches how to do what I do, go to howtoflipnewyorkcourse.com. If you're interested in finding out more about one-on-one coaching, go to coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're watching on any channel, please click the thumbs up. I really appreciate the likes. And keep the comments coming. I post 5 times a week. I try almost every week. And I run out of things to talk about. So you can ask any comment. It doesn't even have to be about the topic of the video you're watching. Um, and if it's simple, I'll just reply with an answer. If it's something I've covered before, I'll send you links to a video or videos on it. And if it's something new, I will do a brand new video on it. So thank you very, very much for watching.